Trump just crushed the field in the Iowa caucus process. If you're one of these liberals that was surprised by that, this is a video you need to listen to.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now waiting, better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything.
Winter's finally come to New England. You can see up on my roof, got the solar panels and the full sun today. They're generating a lot of power, but not those two in the upper right, are they? They're all covered in snow. One thing when you get solar panels on your roof, a lot of people in the industry tend to say that the snow just falls right off, and it does eventually, but it sits there for quite a while. I scooped off a bunch of that stuff this morning because I have a ladder ready, I have a roof rake ready, because you know, I understand that the idea that these things just clear themselves off is fantasy. That's not reality. I put them up on my roof because it was a convenient place to put them, but I was fully aware that I was going to have to clear those things off periodically, and I'm okay with that. And that's what I want to talk about in this video, is fantasy, reality, and people being surprised when their imagined idea about the way that the world is doesn't match up with you know, the reality on the ground when they get really confronted with it. Specifically, I want to talk about, you know, what happened recently in Iowa with the Iowa caucuses and Trump completely dominating there. Newspaper headlines that I was seeing use words like shocked, stunning, and the idea that someone would be shocked or stunned by Trump winning in the Iowa caucuses suggests to me that whatever person that is somebody who was not really living in reality. They did not understand you know, the nature of the world that they were living in. It seemed beyond possible to them that large groups of people would be interested in having Trump have a second term in office. And I'm not going to get into you know, my personal political you know, leanings in terms of what my preferences are. In this video, I want to talk specifically about being in touch with reality. And while we're talking about this, we're taking a walk through real reality in the woods. I think a lot of times people forget that actual reality exists out here. And you know, while the example that I'm using at the beginning of this was, you know, my solar panels, you know, misunderstandings about the reality of those, and misunderstandings about the preferences of the populace, at least over in Iowa, there are so many fantasies that persist in our world, and people are constantly being shocked by things, surprised by things. Are you one of them? Are you somebody that tends to you know, be surprised by the you know, the events of the world? Did 9/11 shock you? Did you know, the emergence of COVID shock you? Did the fact that the vaccines that were created for COVID, did the fact that those had an incredibly short effective period, and the idea that they, you know, eventually went into negative territory where people who had taken the vaccines ended up being more likely to contract the virus that the vaccine was allegedly, you know, created against? Did any of that shock you? Did that surprise you? If it did, it's a suggestion to you that the reality that you think is real isn't real. And that's an opportunity to, you know, correct that, or, as most people do, just double down. In this video, I'm not going to talk to the people that are interested in just doubling down. You know, if you're the kind of person that, you know, lives in a world where, you know, the different extreme weather events that we're seeing are shocking to you. If it's shocking to you, seeing tornadoes in places where there, you know, traditionally had never been tornadoes, seeing floods happen in places where there traditionally had never been floods, seeing droughts in places where there had traditionally never been droughts. If any of that is shocking to you, but you're hell-bent against considering the idea that our climate may, in fact, actually be changing, then, you know, this video is not for you. This video is for people who are interested in not being surprised, not being shocked, not being terrified, not being stunned by things that happen in the world, because it's really unnecessary. When big events happen in the world, you know, such as, you know, a couple years ago, Russia invading into Ukraine, people were shocked by that. I wasn't shocked. 9/11 happened. People were shocked by that. I was not shocked. COVID happened. People were shocked. I was not shocked. The vaccines didn't work. People were shocked, or refuse to believe that I think that some people are still in denial on that one. But, you know, when the vaccines didn't, you know, do what they were advertised that they were going to do, I was not shocked. If you are in touch with reality, all these things that shock people around you are not going to shock and surprise you. And why is that even important? Is it just because you want to feel better than other people? It's like, oh, you didn't see it coming, but I totally saw it coming. No, it's not about that. The important part here is if you're someone who is constantly surprised by things, then you're going to be almost kind of definitionally somebody who is not ready for things. If you can see things coming, they are not going to shock you, and you're going to have a greater chance of being ready for those things. And that's what we talk about here on this channel. We're not talking about politics, we're not talking about virtue signaling, we're talking about how to get ahead of the curve, how to see things before they happen so you can be ready for them, because that's the easiest way to be ready for things. If you have no idea what's coming and you have unlimited resources, yeah, it's possible for you to just kind of randomly get ready for everything. But most of us don't have unlimited resources. We have to triage them and put them towards things that we think are more likely to happen in the future. And if you have a pretty solid sense of what is likely to happen in the future, if things that happen in real life do not tend to shock you, then you're going to have a much better chance of having allocated your resources in a way that is sensible and in a way that is functional and useful to you in the future. So how do you fix it? If you're somebody who does feel like you've been shocked by things, and I know a lot of new people are coming to prepping, and that's probably one of the initial feelings that a lot of us have felt. We were shocked by things. When I started, my prepping journey, it was many years ago, and I don't really know exactly how I felt at the time, but I think it's conceivable to think that maybe I felt a little bit of shock. The situation that I had is that I was living in my house, and I just want to stop here. This is really, really beautiful. I'm just gonna give you guys a look at what we got here. It's really cold out. We got the snow is kind of sprinkling through the air, and I'm just gonna walk down to the stream here. This is one of these horrible things about being a prepper. Living out in the woods. In the middle of quote-unquote nowhere. People say, it's crazy, like, what are you running from, Praxis? I'm not running from stuff. This is the kind of stuff I'm running to. So gorgeous. It's cold out. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of cold. I don't know if you've seen my body, but my body type, I don't have a lot of insulation on my body. But, I can still appreciate this. This is really beautiful. So, anyway. Getting back, actually this relates to what got me going on my prepping journey, and it was winter, and I was living in a new house that I had built, and everything was going really great, but it was completely dependent on the grid. I'd always lived in an area where the grid was very reliable, and I moved to a place where that was less so, and we had a big ice storm here in New England, and the power got knocked out. And the power was knocked out for 9.5 days. And that was a really difficult time for me. Again, I don't remember whether I was shocked. I had experienced power outages before, never more than a week long. But, that was a situation where something was possible that I had not really foreseen coming. And it's an uncomfortable feeling to feel that. And that was what kind of catalyzed me towards going down this road, because I did not enjoy the feeling of having things happen that I, was blindsided by. And I know a lot of you guys, new preppers, that's one of the reasons that, you guys have come to prepping. And, for people who have been doing it for a while, like myself, that was part of the genesis for a lot of us as well. So if you find yourself in a situation where things are catching you by surprise, where you do feel stunned and shocked by things, what do you do about that? Well, it all comes down to how you are doing your world building. How are you building your reality? What are the building blocks of what your reality is? Well, that's kind of a mixture for most of us. And it's usually a mixture of our own personal lived experience, combined with the experiences that are shared by others. And then on top of that, I'll put a third category that is experiences shared by the media. And in that case, in particular, I'll put the word experiences in quotes, because the idea of an experience suggests that it's something true and authentic. And a lot of the stuff that's presented through media is not true, is not authentic. It is stuff that is created and disseminated for a particular purpose. and reality be damned a lot of the time. And I think that third category is the big issue for a lot of people. We all have our own personal lived experiences of things. And I think for a lot of us here in the Western world, that's one of the reasons why it's hard for us to imagine the idea of, society not being as strong as, some preppers like myself warn us about, because we don't have any lived experience, the majority of us, of seeing society crumble. Societies have, do, and currently are crumbling all over the world. Throughout time, that is just the rule, that societies, they grow, they persist, and then they crumble at some point. And that's not something that a lot of us experience here in in the United States. That's not to say everybody, certainly, but that is not a common experience for a lot of us. And because of that, because of our personal experience, it's hard for us to wrap our mind around the idea that that could be something that is possible or likely. And oftentimes our own personal experience is oftentimes mirrored by peers and other people that we know personally. But I think the big issue for a lot of people is media, because media tends to, create images of reality that aren't only hindered by the limited worldview of the people, creating those messages. The messages in that media is degraded from reality, based also just on the idea that, there are certain realities that are more advantageous to be pushed by the media for financial reasons, for political reasons, reasons relating to business connections. A lot of the major media, when I say a lot, do I mean all? I think I probably mean all. All media, major media. Okay, well, let's just go. Just to be on the safe side, let's just go back to a lot of. And this is a good example of what we're talking about in this. I almost just created a reality that was based on kind of my hunches and intuitions, and I almost made a statement that might not have been true. It's good to catch yourself on that. So let's catch ourselves and say the vast majority of major media outlets are financed and oftentimes even owned by large business interests. We certainly saw that during the pandemic, where major media outlets were largely financed or partially owned by pharmaceutical companies that had a vested interest in those media outlets pushing a certain narrative. Now, the idea that a certain narrative is being pushed doesn't definitionally mean that narrative is untrue. It could be a true narrative that is being pushed, and the reason it's being pushed is that the truth happens to coincide with the interests of the parties pushing that message. So the simple fact that a business or a company or a major media outlet says something, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's untrue. It just means that it is probably in alignment with their interests for them to be saying that. Could be true, could be untrue, and it's just oftentimes hard to tell the difference between the two of those. But it's important that you do. And the result of not being able to tell the difference between truth and fiction is that you're constantly being surprised by things, you're constantly unprepared for things. And being unprepared for things is not a comfortable state to be in, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. It's also a dangerous state to be in the world that I believe we're moving into, where the cost of not being prepared for things, the cost of being unaware of things, the cost of being surprised by things might be higher than the cost that it's been in the past. So I think it's worth thinking about, where are you getting your information from? Is your information leading you to be able to have a general sense of, predicting where things are going? And by predicting, I don't mean that you know what's going to happen. What I mean is that you know what potentially could happen. And that's an important distinction. Using the Iowa caucuses, for example, the fact that I was not surprised by Trump dominating in that arena doesn't mean that I knew that that was going to be the outcome. I just knew that it was a possible outcome. Consider this analog for what I'm talking about here. Let's say that you have the Super Bowl and there's two evenly matched teams facing each other. You have different media networks that favor one team or favor the other team, and obviously one of those teams is going to win, but the people who are watching the media outlets that favor Team A have been convinced Team A is going to win, and the people who are watching the media outlets that favor Team B are convinced that Team B is going to win. Now, one of those groups is going to be right, one of those groups is going to be wrong, not because one of those groups is doing a better job with journalism, not because they have a monopoly on truth, just one of them is going to be right on accident. The idea is to be in the middle, be in the group that understands that both teams are possible to win, and you don't know which one is going to win, but you're not going to be shocked by either team winning because you were never of any opinion other than the idea that it would be possible for either team to win. So no matter what the outcome would be, you would not be shocked, you would not be surprised by that. Again, it doesn't mean that you can predict the future, it just means that you can understand that either event could unfold. So let's say if football team A won, some sort of terrible event is going to unfold if football team A wins, and if football team B wins, some other sort of terrible event would unfold. Now, if you're a prepper, I know this is kind of a weird. I'm trying to fit like a square peg into a round hole here, but I think you know where I'm going with this. If you were in the group that thought that team A was definitely going to win, you wouldn't prepare for team B winning. And if you're in the other group, you wouldn't prepare for team A to win. But if you're in that group in the middle where you understand that either potential is possible, you would have prepared for both outcomes. It's not about being able to predict the future, it's about understanding what's possible. And that's really, really critical moving into the world that we're in. So again, if you're one of these people that finds yourself being shocked and stunned by the events of the world, if you find yourself surprised by outcomes, it means you're getting your information from the wrong source. Now, I'm not going to tell you what news sources to go to because it's difficult to find them, and I think that for me to make a list right here of what I use would be a mistake, because just because I have found things to be useful in the past doesn't mean they'll persist going on into the future. What we all need to do is constantly evaluate and reevaluate and reevaluate and reevaluate all the outlets from which we get our media, and constantly test them by asking ourselves the following question. Was the expectation that was set up by my having watched this media outlet, was that expectation well matched with reality? Or was I set up to misunderstand things in a way that caused me to be, surprised when the reality ultimately came out? That's the question we all need to keep asking ourselves and re-asking ourselves. Even if you find a media outlet that seems like it is effective at predicting some sort of event, remember the analogy of the football team. You have one media outlet that pushes for one media outlet that pushes for the other. One of those is going to seem to be correct, but a lot of media outlets are oftentimes just correct by accident. So we constantly have to reevaluate and reevaluate all of our sources of information and constantly do, checks against the reality of what turns out to be real. And always, more importantly than anything else, keep your mind open to what's real. Don't put up blinders, and don't try to trick yourself into believing the world is as you would like it to be. Sometimes that's the case. Look at my solar panel up there. They're all cleared now. Sometimes it works out that way, but it doesn't always work out that way, and it pays to step outside and actually look at your solar panels and see if they've cleared. That's it, and thanks for watching. Hey YouTube preppers, if you enjoyed this video, here's another one that I think you might like. But before you click on it, I wanted to take a moment to thank all the people on the right-hand side of your screen. They help to support all the work that I do here over at patreon.com. If you'd like to join them and get your name added to the list, the link's below.